Long ago, we looked upon a foreboding sky. The memory of the star that threatened all burns eternal in our hearts. In its wake came an age of silence. Yet with each fond remembrance, we knew those encountered were not forgotten. That someday we would see them again. Perhaps it was no more than wishful thinking. But after the long calm, there are now the beginnings of a stir. The reunion at hand may bring joy, it may bring fear, but let us embrace whatever it brings. For they are coming back. At last, the promise has been made.
That was how the idea of Final Fantasy VII Remake was introduced to the world. But in our collective excitement, I don't think we really listened to the words closely enough. In the years since Remake's release, where we were all captivated by an ending that shocked us and its promises to change the destiny we knew, many of us have spent an obscene amount of time trying to unpack why the developers have promised changing a story we all love. At least in the way that we know it. Unless, of course, you've never played Final Fantasy VII. In which case, this is the time to drop a spoiler warning that the rest of this video will spoil the events of the original game as well as the compilation of Final Fantasy VII. Now that you've been warned, on to the rest of the video. In truth, even if you went back and listened to that original teaser trailer and saw it for what it was, a forewarning that this remake trilogy was going to change FF7 in ways that, quote, may bring fear, I'm not sure many of us truly listened to the words that followed. Quote, but let us embrace whatever it brings. Even if we say we have, our actions betray us. We listened to spoiler casts immediately after beating it that attempted to explain and predict where things were going. We jumped into message boards, Reddit threads, and Twitter convos to compare notes. We watched hours-long theory videos, several of them, that unpacked every element of lore committed to print. And some of us created whole YouTube channels to talk about it. We may have said we were embracing whatever Remake brings, but we spent a whole lot of time trying to figure it out for ourselves. I am among the most guilty. In fact, if you look closely enough, that has been very clear. And while I'm about to talk about myself for a minute or so, this is relevant to the entire discourse about the Remake trilogy, I promise you. My first video on this channel took you all on a journey of my feelings about the game from Remake's release to its 2-year anniversary, where I talked openly about my obsession and fears about Remake, and how it led me down a rabbit hole of theory videos that gave me a whole new understanding of the Remake project. Shortly after that, I made a Zack theory video, trying to come up with some way that he could have an adventure separate from our party so that FF7 Rebirth wouldn't spoil the truth about Cloud's past to new players. It is arguably my favorite reveal/twist in any story in any medium ever, so I really wanted it to stay intact for those who never experienced it. I then made a video, probably my best and most relevant one, analyzing how FF7, in the words of the creators, was keeping the quote-unquote crux of the original game intact by amplifying one of the best parts of its narrative, shifting its storytelling model from just a single unreliable narrator in the form of our protagonist to an unreliable world where we found ourselves questioning everything that's going on. And most recently, I made a video breaking down the first extensive Rebirth trailer while explaining my own theories, including how I was 90% sure that my original belief about there being multiple timelines/realities/dimensions/whatever you want to call it was probably misguided, and that instead Rebirth would take place in one singular remade timeline/reality/dimension/whatever you want to call it. I don't really care what you call it, but judging from the comment section, it seems people really care about what I call it, so I'm just covering all the bases. The shorthand for that single timeline theory was found in its most commonly used moniker, the Terrier timeline, explaining that the Beagleverse, as we knew it from the first game, had been destroyed while the party was in the Singularity, meaning the party stepped back out into the version of the world where Stamp was portrayed as a terrier and Zack had survived his last stand. Then the release date announcement trailer dropped, and this happened.
It's upon us, the reunion, when worlds merge. I'm waiting, Cloud.
And if the words "when worlds merge" wasn't clear enough that there were going to be multiple realities / timelines / whatever that merge, then it was especially clear when you zoomed in enough on this little shop in Junon where you can clearly see Stamp portrayed as a beagle. There it was, staring me dead in the face. Beagle Stamp lived. The Beagleverse wasn't destroyed. I was wrong. You might think that I would be sad about that, but I wasn't. I mean, did you see that trailer? 3 years of obsession about what they had in store did nothing to prepare me for how magical every millisecond of that trailer was. The ominous music and sky above a demolished Midgar, the majesty of Junon, the outright unbelievable beauty of so many locations from Cosmo Canyon to Gongaga. Yes, they made this turn into this. The surprisingly welcome reveal of this character, where they practically turned to Kirby, which is a stroke of genius, by the way. The buggy, the chocobos, the mini-games, all meticulously recreated in the most breathtaking version of the Gold Saucer I could ever imagine. All of that was punctuated by incredible combat, exciting bosses like the Midgar Zolan, and some of the most jaw-dropping shots and music ever put into a trailer. And yes, the long-awaited reveal of Vincenzo Valentine. So while the first thought I had at the end of the trailer was that the single timeline theory I liked was wrong, my second thought was,
Don't even care.
it was the first time I truly understood what the developers meant back in 2015 when they said, quote, "Let us embrace whatever it brings." I had spent years obsessing, probably unhealthfully so, on trying to make sense of it. Why were they changing things? How were they changing things? In what ways would it build on the original game's themes or destroy them? How have other franchises like Evangelion done it? I've heard people mention that. I've heard it's similar to Remake, so how did they do it? And was it any good? In some way, I just couldn't take not knowing. To be clear, if someone from the development team actually offered to explain it to me, I wouldn't accept that offer. But I would still consume everything else I could in order to bring me some twisted form of peace and certainty that their big swing to change the overall plot in the most over-the-top, ridiculous way would result in a home run. That it would be worth it. That my heart would survive the fallout of destroying that faded story that I cherish with all my soul. Said more simply, I was looking to be reassured that they wouldn't fuck it up. They were right back in 2015. The reunion at hand may bring joy, and it may bring fear. I was afraid. I loved so much of Remake, but deep down I was terrified that I wouldn't love all of it. That's why I made this channel. That's why I've watched and now become even friends with so many amazing content creators who are equally obsessed with the Remake trilogy. And it's probably what has led you to my videos in some way. That same desire to figure it out. And the latest FF7 Rebirth trailer has made it clear that none of us really have. Some of us have gotten bits and pieces right, like the idea of multiple realities, even if none of us are quite sure how they work. I now know people who've genuinely spent even more time than me digging through every clue, reading every Ultimania and every interview from every language, and that trailer proved us all wrong in some way. Try as we might, none of us really know what story they're trying to tell. It'll ultimately probably be somewhat similar in the end to the original, as they've said over and over, but they've chosen to open each trailer reminding us that it is different. It will be different, and it won't be like we expect. Forget even the story for a moment. Who expected to get black mountain climbing chocobos and flying green ones in this game? I thought that was going to be a part 3 thing. Who expected to get a glimpse of the weapons? Who thought they'd see Cloud on a Segway? None of us. That's who. all the time you've spent watching videos like mine, that I've spent watching videos just like you, none of it prepared us for what the developers were actually doing. And as we all sat around still processing and talking about everything that shocked us about that trailer, there was suddenly a drop of hands-on impressions from press and content creators who actually got to play a couple of hours of the game. That trailer had already made the game seem way bigger than we imagined, but then those people talked about so many things that weren't in the trailer that it made me realize the trailer only just scratched the surface. And as proof of that, just a couple of days later, the TGS stage demo happens and it blew us away all over again. Even the people who played the Nibelheim and Junon demos.
Areas you can go.
This is insane, bro. Look at all like the depth that the map has. It's not flat at all.
Queen, oh, this is the new minigame.
Oh my god, Mog House. What the fuck? It's Mog House.
That's the Moogle House. Moogle House.
Whoa.
It's Moogle House.
Whoa.
I love.
There were so many people in need.
Oh my god, dude, look at Calm. Oh my god. Oh my fucking god.
On top of some of the
I'm gonna fucking cry.
you can talk to them and they will ask some questions.
What the fuck, dude? What am I fucking looking at?
Even their wildest imaginations weren't wild enough. Even they couldn't dare to think of Horizon-like chocobo hunting, or being able to leap down cliff sides, or the potential of scaling them with ropes as mentioned by the developer, or Zelda-esque towers that reveal points of interest on the map, or Mog House being a real location and minigame, or a complex card game with its own storied questline, or a robust piano-playing rhythm game, or whatever this is. And I didn't even name everything. I saw all of it just a day before recording this video, and my brain can't even capture the variety of experiences this game offers. It's an impossibly large ambition, which makes it so perfect that the team chose to release this game on Leap Day, because that's what FF7 Remake is, a leap of faith. Hell, even the original game itself was a leap of faith. The very first Final Fantasy, according to legend, was Squaresoft's last effort to make a video game. If the game failed, they failed, hence the title, Final Fantasy. Not only was the game a huge hit, but they went on to make 5 more installments on Nintendo platforms. They had a winning formula, and they threw it away. They saw the limitations of the upcoming Nintendo 64 and abandoned it so they could chase this wild dream of making a 3D RPG in the mid-90s when there was no guarantee of success, especially putting on the first game console ever even made by Sony. That sounds a lot like FF7 Remake, doesn't it? These developers also threw away a winning formula, the easy slam dunk of doing a one-to-one remake so they could chase this wild dream of turning this trilogy into this crazy reimagining of the original story with, quote, new mysteries added on top of it. Think about how much of a risk that is. How much they must have debated the direction late into the night out in their offices. The world had been begging them for a remake for at least a decade, and they made a plan to not give us exactly what we want. It must have been a lot like the debates they had before making the OG FF7. In the oral history of Final Fantasy VII on Polygon that I highly recommend to all of you, the OG director Yoshinori Kitase talked about how there were lots of debates about even pursuing 3D graphics. They didn't know if 3D graphics were going to be a thing or if there would be a market for it. They didn't even have anyone on staff who could do 3D graphics and had to reach out to friends for references. And then when they found people who could do 3D graphics with them, it turned out, quote, it was their first time working on a game and it was our first time working with 3D graphics. It was insanely risky. But you know what? For many of us, even deciding to play the original FF7 was a leap of faith also. Over the years, I've heard countless stories just like mine. People who praise FF7 as their favorite game of all time, but had never touched an RPG before, let alone a Final Fantasy game. I was just a snot-nosed, 10-year-old adrenaline junkie gamer hopping around stuff like Road Rash, Streets of Rage, Battletoads, Spider-Man, Maximum Carnage, and all those kinds of games. But one day my uncle came over with his PlayStation and a copy of Final Fantasy VII, and it captivated me. I had never played an RPG, I had no idea what turn-based combat was. Hell, I wasn't even used to reading in a video game. But something about FF7 grabbed me by the throat and demanded that I play it. And so, I took a leap of faith on that fateful day in 1997. I had no idea what to expect or what I was getting into, and it became my favorite game of all time. Just like many of you had never played anything like it, and equally fell in love. And so here we are, more than 25 years later, and none of us really know what to expect once again. No matter how hard we try to figure it out, no matter how much we dig at the lore or talk to one another, Rebirth stands in the distance with its arms crossed, laughing at our feeble attempts. We're not supposed to know what comes next. We can't know what comes next. And even if some of us have played it already, it's still surprising us. In many ways, for the past 3 years, we've been just like Aerith, standing on the road outside of Calm, anxious about whether the FF7 Remake trilogy will live up to our hopes and live up to the original despite deviating from it. And we talk to each other in hopes of finding solace and reassurance. And while we do that, Square Enix and the development team are like Barrett, looking at us with total confidence in themselves, and all they have to say about that feeling in our stomachs is,
"That's its way of telling you it's hungry. Let's move."
And you know what? After everything we just saw, after actually seeing inside of Calm, they were right. That feeling is nothing to fear. It was just a bit of hunger. But now, I feel fed. And I'm ready to take that leap of faith with them, just like I did in 1997. And as it turns out, I get to do it on Leap Day. Isn't that beautiful?
Go on and get fully wrecked at the Happy Turtle!
Okay, I've waxed poetic enough. I know you don't really want to hear me have an existential crisis over the practice of theory crafting and how right or wrong I've been. You probably want to hear theories anyway. So even though I've just spent 15 minutes explaining why it's damn near pointless to predict anything about Rebirth, we are all brain-rotted FF7 slum drunks that demand a sip of that fine theory wine. So here are just a few things that I noticed while watching the trailer and demo footage that I think are interesting food for thought. But before I do, there are 2 things I want to mention. First, I just want to say that what really inspired that whole soliloquy at the start of the video was realizing how little all of my theorizing mattered to me once we actually saw the game. I know we're all passionate about the story and how it may or may not change, but I just want to acknowledge that even if it goes our way or not, whether it matches these predictions or if these predictions are way off, just please keep in mind that this is ultimately the story the developers want to tell, and these are all just fun guesses that are going to pale in comparison to the actual fun we will have playing this game. It just looks like a blast. Secondly, there have been a lot of videos out there already making guesses, and I've seen a lot of them, so I'm just going to focus on things I haven't seen people talk about too much. So hopefully none of this feels too repetitive from stuff you've seen or heard elsewhere. The very first thing that I'm surprised I haven't seen people talk about all that much are Cloud's pauldrons and how they differ from the very first teaser trailer for Rebirth. When we first saw Cloud walking with Sephiroth along the trail to Mount Nibel, we all assumed that this was the flashback scene that's told while the party's in Calm. But if you look back, he only has 1 pauldron instead of 2, just like Cloud in present-day events. Look, that is a bare shoulder. But in the new Rebirth footage, all of the scenes from the flashback show Cloud with both pauldrons on. Basically what I'm saying is that I think this scene from last year's teaser trailer with Cloud and Sephiroth walking to Mount Nibel is not from the flashback, but will be whenever current day Cloud travels to Nibelheim. There will be some sequence where our present day single pauldron Cloud travels to Mount Nibel with Sephiroth. Probably so Sephiroth can mess with his head some more. Next up, there's been a lot of chatter about this scene with people thinking that maybe this is the doctor from Mideel, but the official subtitles reveal that the doctor's name is Dr. Sheeran, who is revealed to be the doctor who did one of Tifa's surgeries after she was wounded by Sephiroth. Because of that, I think this scene will actually play into the mind games that Sephiroth is playing with Cloud. When he tells Cloud, quote, "Do not be deceived, you know the truth, trust in me," I believe that will be Sephiroth telling him not to believe the doctor when the doctor says he saved Tifa, it will be Sephiroth continuing to play into the idea that he did kill Tifa. It will all be part of his big brain deception that Tifa may actually be a Jenova imposter of some sort. Before I get to the Zack stuff, which I'm sure you're all eager to get to, there is one more thing I wanted to quickly talk about. As I've mentioned before on this channel and in this very video, I've spent a lot of time since Remake reconciling why the developers were giving away the truth about Cloud's past through both Hojo's dialogue in Remake and through the release of Crisis Core Reunion. And I just wanted to acknowledge one factor I didn't take into account, but is shockingly obvious in hindsight. That big plot twist would have been so much harder to pull off with fully mocapped and voice acted scenes. Just check out this clip from the excellent hands-on preview video done by Schrodinger's Baby Seal.
Yeah, but if we keep using Mako to power our homes, springs like this will disappear, right?
What are you talking about? Who told you that?
My dad. And the mayor, if you must know.
During this scene from the flashback, Cloud's mannerisms and personality may remind you of a certain other potentially alive member of Soldier. I played the English dub and Cody nails it here. He encapsulates Cloud the puppy and strikes the exact narrative tone demanded.
You're practically panting.
I'm excited.
Such a puppy.
In the original game, these are the first hints of Cloud acting a bit more happy-go-lucky in his body movements and dialogue, but it's not as dramatically noticeable as it is in these fully realized scenes that are going to be shown in all their glory in a game that's coming out in the year 2024. When the characters were these little deformed chibis, it was a lot easier to hide the magic trick. I didn't realize it until after seeing the new footage, but it really hit me when I was watching it. Okay, now I think it's time to talk about the Zack stuff, which I'm sure you're all very interested in. I have a lot of guesses about what could be going on, but they have really kept us well in the dark when it comes to this stuff, and given how the Beagle versus Terrier timeline thing worked out for me, I'm very hesitant to say for sure. So this part of the video is by far the most speculative, but I think really fun to talk about, so let's talk about it. There are a couple of key shots of Zack in this trailer. In one moment he's dirty, and at another he is clean. We see Elmira in the backgrounds of this shot, and she's looking directly in Zack and Cloud's direction, as you would do after parting ways with people. This screams to me that we're seeing Zack and Cloud after they met with Elmira, and she told Zack the dialogue that we hear at the start of the trailer, that most people believe the world is ending. It seems very clear that they had a conversation, and this is right after that conversation. I've also seen speculation that Zack and Cloud get separated at this point, but this Zack looks the same in this scene as he did walking to Midgar in the teaser trailer, meaning he wasn't cleaned up before this point. Considering we see a clean version of Zack carrying Cloud later on, I assume this isn't where Zack and Cloud get separated, if they get separated at all. I don't even know if they get separated. The sequence of events seems to be Zack getting to Midgar, having this moment with Kyrie while dirty, then meeting up with Elmira, cleaning himself up, and eventually going back out into the world with Cloud in tow. This is basically the only prediction I'm fairly confident about. But for the record, because I've had to eat some humble pie about past predictions in this video, I will point out that I did predict Zack would go see Elmira at some point in his journey. Check out this moment from my Deep Ground Zack theory video. It is my belief that Zack's story in Rebirth will largely take place in Midgar. As I already stated, after being unable to find Aerith, he'll head to her house to ask Elmira about her whereabouts. In the process, he'll learn that Aerith had recently been captured by Shinra and her friends had gone on a mission to save her. Chasing this lead, he'll end up at the Shinra building and stumble upon Deep Ground, where he will probably have to contend with Nero, a potentially corrupted Sonon, and perhaps even Genesis. Now, it's certainly not a perfect theory, and I'm not sure if it's enough for the totality of Rebirth, but it would involve giving Zack a logical path forward in his quest to find Aerith and possibly derail him long enough for the general story beats from the original to play out, namely the all-important plotline of Cloud eventually losing his mind as the cliffhanger for Rebirth and recovering it early in Part 3. So at least there's that. Do I still think he'd end up in Deep Ground? I don't know. In actuality, I would imagine that if you're Zack and you're looking up at that sky, you're going to try to figure out what is going on with the world. But he also has to take care of Cloud first, so I'm not sure where that would take his journey. Possibly to the orphanage as a safe place to keep Cloud in a similar way to Biggs. Elmyra might know about it and mention it. That could also be where he runs into Biggs and Avalanche, whose planetology beliefs would probably intrigue him given the state of the world and the sky. I know that at the end of Remake, we technically saw Biggs at the orphanage, presumably at a later point in time after Platefall, but it's also established in Traces of Two Paths that Biggs has a connection with the orphanage, and so he may regularly visit, as he once mentioned to Cloud in Remake. That could be where Zack's journey kicks off, perhaps. Look, I don't know, but that would be one interesting way to connect the dots between these surprise survivals at the end of Part 1. And one last thing on Zack, in case you didn't see the official description of his character, but the official bio for Zack on the Square Enix blog says, quote, "After a grueling battle in which he overcomes the odds and cheats death, Zack returns to Midgar, where he hopes to see his love Aerith with a Mako poison Cloud in tow." Look, if you want to say that the reality he is in is some kind of existence created by the Lifestream or from the memories of the Lifestream, go for it. I'm not going to fight you over it. But I do think this confirms that in whatever reality he's in, he is a breathing and alive human being. Maybe it's a world that's built of Genova Lifestream illusions. I don't know, but whatever it is, it has real alive people like Kyrie and Elmyra who we know are alive. So I don't think that it's just some Sixth Sense reality with unknowingly dead souls. As for the rest of my theories, they have to deal with the big elephant in the room, which is this line from the start of the trailer. Quote, "The world will be saved, but will you?" This is truly a genius teaser line. There are now two people who are eligible for being saved when they shouldn't be, Zack and Aerith. If the Big Bang moment of Rebirth is about Zack's world and our world merging, it kind of threatens both of them equally. Neither of them are supposed to exist past a certain point. What I first thought when I saw this line was that it would be a hell of a line to be spoken by Sephiroth to either Zack or Aerith. I imagined a scenario where Sephiroth was saying this to either one of those characters in a moment that should feel triumphant, but would come with a great cost, with it feeling like they're about to save the world, but Sephiroth teases them about whether they'll actually survive the moment. But no matter what, the one thing I was pretty certain about was that this line didn't feel like a typical trailer line. It felt like a line of dialogue that was turned into a trailer line. It's just strange for a trailer to break the fourth wall and address the player as quote-unquote you. It sounds like one character talking to another, and lo and behold, that does appear to be what it is. Before I get into what I think the dialogue is about though, I do want to acknowledge that Nomura actually did talk specifically about this line in an interview with Game Watch in Japan. The interviewer asked, quote, "Could you please tell us what thoughts and feelings have gone into these words?" Nomura responded, quote, "First and foremost, it has to do with the fate of a certain woman, which I'd imagine is a question on everyone's minds. Many intriguing topics have arisen as themes, such as how Zack is involved, which is a mystery that has emerged from the Remake series, and so Zack's perspective is also a factor, as well as Cloud's, of course. And with Cloud, you've got the people around him having doubts regarding his existence, so Cloud, as seen by Tifa, is also a factor. I thought up the tagline by combining all of these, asking who the you would be for each person." End quote. It is a true Nomura line, really meant to mess with us while giving very little clarity, which is what I like about the line, by the way. That said, there was a bit of insight given into the line by Turquoise Hammer, a great translator of FF7 stuff that you should follow, that I think provides some insight into who could be involved in this head-spinning bit of dialogue. He looked at the line in Japanese and pointed out that when the word you is used in the Japanese line, it uses this version of the word. Apparently there are different ways you can refer to you, just as Sephiroth has different versions of the personal pronoun that he uses for himself, Watashi and Ore, which FF7 theory crafters have analyzed to death. So what's interesting is that the version of you that is used in the written version of the Japanese line is this, and apparently, quote, "In all of the FF7 series, only one main character refers to another using this pronoun. This is how Aerith occasionally refers to both Zack and Cloud." So it's possible that at some point in this game, maybe during the reunion where worlds merge, Aerith says to either Zack or Cloud, quote, "The world will be saved, but will you?" That'll make whatever moment that is pretty tragic, and probably most tragic if it's Zack. Turquoise Hammer does point out, however, there is one other character that uses that pronoun. To quote him directly, quote, "I should probably also add that there's another character who uses this pronoun frequently because of all the Loveless he quotes, but surely not," end quote. That means that Genesis also says this version of you, so take that for what it's worth. Maybe this is a line of dialogue from Genesis, who knows. Before moving on to the next thing though, all of this talk about worlds merging does inspire me to take a bit of a victory lap around this video I made a while ago. It was my take on why they were spoiling the truth of who Cloud and Zack were ahead of Rebirth by releasing Crisis Core Reunion, which was the major reveal of the original game. It applied to any timeline scenario because whether there was one reality or multiple realities, I saw it as an attempt to take the feeling of Cloud as an unreliable narrator and jacket full of steroids, making us feel confused by having to face what feels like an unreliable world where we can't trust anything. And Sephiroth literally saying the words, quote, "Reunion when worlds merge," feels like the devs explicitly teasing us that we are now in an unreliable reality where we as players are meant to question everything. That brings me to the last big piece of speculation. This is the official box art for the game, and this is what Nomura told the press about that art, as translated by the well-known Itakamochi aka Audrey on Twitter. Quote, "The key visual represents the three worlds that form the axis of the story, Cloud, Zack, and Sephiroth. The center of the image is Sephiroth, who is the instigator of past events that propelled the story forward. To his sides are Cloud and Zack, whose destinies were torn apart by him. Sephiroth brings forth the image of blood and fire, and the sky is slowly being dyed red as the world falls to pieces. The logo is also being stained red, similar to the sky's imagery," end quote. I will admit that I'm not the best at breaking down visual metaphors, but given that description, it does remind me of what Sleepeasy has been proposing for a while, that Sephiroth's objective is to remove the foundations of Cloud's identity. One of those foundations actually is Zack. It is by Cloud clearly remembering who Zack is that Cloud is able to reground himself in who he is. It allows him to overcome the confusion caused by Mako poisoning and Sephiroth's manipulation throughout the original game. Clearly remembering the truth that he was just the infantryman. The same infantryman who killed Sephiroth is ultimately what's needed to save Cloud's mind so that he can go on to save the planet. But by creating a world where Zack lives, it has the potential to remove that core memory of Zack's death from Cloud's mind. Even if Cloud remembers Zack in some way, as he seems to in the first teaser trailer, if he can't link himself to that formative memory, then it has the chance to break Cloud's bonds to reality. We know Sephiroth is trying to do that with Tifa, and it really seems that's what he's trying to do with Cloud and Zack as well, given the description that their, quote, destinies were torn apart by him. This could be why Sephiroth's red sky is becoming the dominant influence over the world in the new key art, as Cloud and Zack's influence on fate begins to become overshadowed by Sephiroth's presence. I do also think that this could set up the core conceit of Part 3's Lifestream sequence to rescue Cloud's mind. If the crux of the story is still what I believe it to be from the original game, that line I found from the OG's official introduction that reads, quote, "One mercenary for hire must look amidst the lies and deception to find the man he is within." If that is what they are sticking to, the idea of Cloud having to find the man he is within amidst all the lies and deception, then I think the idea of Sephiroth tearing apart Cloud and Zack's destinies and undoing the memories of Cloud as we know them would be a really interesting way to have a new moment that could, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, be as impactful as the original Lifestream sequence. Hear me out. When we all first played the Lifestream sequence for the very first time, we all knew that Cloud's memory was wrong. And even if we didn't, then Tifa shut it down within the first few minutes and told Cloud that wasn't the truth. What made the experience so memorable, however, was the journey to discovering that truth. As I said in my Unreliable World video, it seems like the remake trilogy is trying to recreate the feeling we all had when playing the original game for the first time. That moment where we all said, "Oh my god," as we started to put all of the puzzle pieces together. So if we're going to take the developers at their word, that the core story, the crux of the story will remain the same, then how can they do that? How could the developers make Cloud's mystery, that they themselves said was their favorite part of the original game, feel like a mystery again? By breaking apart the old puzzle and restarting it from scratch, making the puzzle pieces look different, so much so that it feels like we're constructing an all-new picture. But the surprise at the end of it will be discovering that the final picture looks mostly the same. It'll be that you just didn't see it coming together because it looked, when shuffled in front of you, so different. I think that's what they did. They had us look at the fate we knew, destroy it, created timeline divergences, showed us seemingly dead party members, and got Sephiroth talking about worlds merging. And I'm not saying those things are red herrings. I do think they are consequential, and we will see things like worlds merging and characters ending up with seemingly different fates, but I think it'll all be in an effort to make us really feel like the story we know is gone. And I think that's what they're going to do to Cloud's mind and our memories. I think they're trying to make it so that the big surprise is that we as the audience will know the truth. We'll know all the puzzle pieces and how they're supposed to fit together, but realize that Sephiroth has changed things so irrevocably that we will wonder how it's even possible for Cloud to ever learn the truth. And the path to him knowing the truth will seem impossible. He won't believe in Tifa, he won't believe that he took over the mantle for Zack because Zack would have never passed it along because Zack would have never died. And we will wonder how on earth Cloud will ever find who he is again. We will know that everything is so messed up that we'll think the odds of Cloud finding the truth will be too great to overcome. And in part 3, it'll feel like Cloud is lost for good, until we save him against all odds. Just like we did in the original game, when we didn't know the full picture or how Cloud will figure it all out, until the moment it happens. And even though the journey to that moment will be different, it will hopefully feel the same, and hopefully give us the feeling of finally figuring out the simple truth behind a complex, multi-layered mystery that drove us to the brink of madness, just like our hero. And our newly restored Cloud will be able to start on a path to take Sephiroth down once and for all in the ultimate finale of this fandom-breaking remake trilogy. And that's all I've got for theories and predictions. There were a couple of different thoughts I considered adding into this video, but they really felt like their own topic, so look out for a separate video on those. As I said at the start, the odds are against me and pretty much any theory crafter, and I'm just excited to take this leap of faith with the devs because they just continue to surprise me. And surprise is the spice of life. I know that technically the saying is variety is the spice of life, but potato potato. What I was most excited about coming out of that trailer was just how much of a video game-ass video game it looked like. It just looks like there's tons of stuff to do. I'm so excited for all these different traversal chocobos. The buggy reminded me of driving around in Uncharted 4, which was great. The world feels a lot more open than I expected. The developers mentioned in the PlayStation blog interview that there will be at least one optional summon side quest, and the idea of getting more world lore and a better understanding of what the summons are is really exciting to me. I hope that there turn out to be a bunch of big lore side quests and dungeons. That was my main beef with the FF7 Remake side missions. They kind of felt like busy work, and they technically were since they were merc jobs, but I really love when side quests feel like these worthwhile missions that are as substantive as the main story quest, with as much care put into how they're designed and how their stories are told. And the fact that the game has over 100 hours of content is just insanely amazing. I did everything I could in my first playthrough of FF7 Remake. I played very slow, I stopped and listened to NPCs, and it took me 49 hours. So if this game is roughly twice as long on a first playthrough than that, then I can't wait. I just can't wait to feel like I'm living in this world in the same way that I felt like I was living in the OG FF7 world with seemingly endless possibilities. But that's it for me and my thoughts on the most recent trailer and TGS info. Like, subscribe, do all those YouTube things, phone a friend, tell them the Subtext YouTube channel is pretty cool. I appreciate you all and can't wait to see more of Rebirth. See you in the next video.